One of the things that make my skin crawl every couple of months is a new compilation of news anchors using the exact same terminology, saying the exact same script about the exact same thing. You can put compilations together like this, and it really creeps you out.
Russian collusion.
Trump, Russian sort of collusion.
Trump, Russian, possible collusion. Trump, Russian, metal collusion. Trump, Russia, possible collusion.
Trump, Russian, potentially collusion.
Trump, Russia, possible collusion.
Trump, Russian, possible collusion.
Trump, Russian, collusion. Trump, Russia, Russian collusion. Trump, Russia, possible collusion. Russian hacked our election.
Here comes a big change. Because all of a sudden, Trump, Russian, possible collusion, Russian collusion.
Trump, Russian, possible collusion.
Trump, Russian, possible collusion. Trump, the Russians, collusion.
Collusion with the Russians. Trump, Russia, possible collusion. Trump, Russia, possible collusion.
And you
collusion. Prove collusion.
look at them clapping. It's like they've been trained.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why it's so creepy to me is because now we're learning that Operation Mockingbird, which is, of course, the old CIA plot to control all of American media, is actually alive and well, based on an interview that we just wrapped with Tulsi Gabbard. Now, we've had little sprinklings of this here and there. For instance, James O'Keefe caught a CIA officer undercover talking about how they're going to put Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones out of jail because they refuse to repeat the established talking points. And we have Tucker Carlson many times over explaining that he's been pressured to repeat the established talking points. Well, what is this? Well, it's part of Operation Mockingbird. This is a operation that's well documented. Here at the CIA, for instance, reading room, hundreds of pages of the CIA pressuring or forcing reporters to write specific narratives. In some instances, according to these documents that are publicly available, imagine what's not publicly available, the CIA placed their own agents as reporters inside of newsrooms in order to literally be CIA vehicles and assets for what Americans are thinking. CIA's Operation Mockingbird was a supposed clandestine operation meant to manipulate the American media. Some believe it's still active today. Let's read. In 1977, journalist Carl Bernstein published an article in the Rolling Stone with serious allegation that hundreds of American journalists worked for the intelligence agency, the CIA. The operation for decades involved some of the most prominent news organizations in the world, including the New York Times, CBS, Time. CIA director shared some details of the practice with reporters and finally had to fess up to congressional investigators. For decades, since World War II, when journalists came in close contact with CIA officers, obviously in the war zones, members of the Office of Strategic Services, which is the predecessor of the CIA, would often bump the reporters and get them to write what they wanted. In the 1950s and 60s, the early part of the Cold War, the program was ramped up heavily. We had journalists all over Berlin and Vienna to help us keep track of what was coming and what was happening. We were just running journalists. The program expanded and expanded and expanded, and as it goes, ladies and gentlemen, eventually you just ended up having journalists inside of the biggest news organizations in America being bankrolled by the CIA. They have it all dead to rights. This was all exposed in the late 70s.
A pensar male si fa peccato.
Bernstein wrote that the program composed of accredited staff members of news organizations, freelancers, editors, publishers, columnists, commentators who work for organizations like the New York Times, CBS, Time Magazine, and Newsweek. The CIA bankrolled foreign press services to provide cover for operatives. Ooh, baby. The media being used as a propaganda mechanism, we saw it flatly. I mean, I think it's the smoking gun, quite frankly. of the Obamagate narrative and the Russiagate narrative, that it was so baked in that the New York Times and Washington Post went and ran with it. Some would say that that's part of Operation Mockingbird. Some would say that that's part of what we learned in the Church Committee, that the intel agencies were using media outlets as their mouthpieces, and that those mouthpieces would parrot the official narrative. And I wanted to ask you, is this operation still going on? Are you aware of the intel agencies working directly with media outlets in order to push prescribed narratives that may or may not be true?
It's something that we've already had to deal with, Benny, within this administration, where there are people within the intelligence community who believe that their will is more important than the will of the American people, and will weaponize intelligence by leaking it to their friends within the mainstream media with the intent of undermining President Trump's agenda. It is not one that he hasn't already talked about in every rally and town hall that he did throughout the campaign. I don't even know how many there were, but President Trump is enacting the very thing he promised the American people he would do in this election. So people in the intelligence community, they may agree, they may disagree. That's not the point here. As intelligence professionals, as people who work in the national security space, in the intelligence community, they are required to fulfill their mandate to their oath to the Constitution of the United States and to the President of the United States, who was duly elected by the American people. Those who leak intelligence to their friends in the mainstream media with the intent of undermining the president who was elected by the American people, none of these intelligence professionals were. They are subverting the will of the people and therefore undermining the Constitution.
It's wild that you're still having to deal with that. Call it what you will. But Operation Mockingbird, just incredible that they were just out with it, that they were using the media as government organs to push propaganda, and it's still happening today.
This is why what we're doing is so important, Benny,
Yes.
and this is why President Trump's mandate in this is really critical, is by exposing the truth, by exposing the bad actors within the intelligence community and in the political space who are weaponizing intelligence to advance their own political interests, is so important to be able to turn the light on in places that have been dark for far too long, expose the truth, and drive accountability. That's the only way that we can actually shift this and begin the work to try to restore trust in the intelligence community.
This made some major news. We're proud to have asked. If you look at some of the things that John Brennan had been saying, he's been going on talking about how we need to reestablish the control of the media because the narrative is getting out of control here with Russiagate. Probably the best person to comment on this in my lifetime has been Tucker Carlson.
I think Operation Mockingbird, for example, didn't actually end, and they just changed the name. What do you do when that comes to you? How do you identify what's misinformation and disinformation?
Well, that's a great question, but they did not stop the Project Mockingbird. The fact that it got revealed, and that they during the Church Committee hearings back in 75 and 76, at that time they identified 42 specific, deeply embedded CIA national security people inside the major media, and that there's still those kind of people there. They have them now as their national security reporters. They call them that. They've got an official name for them, and that gives them liaison into the national security information so that they can get good sources. But the cost of that compromise is that they agree not to reveal certain kind of things. So they're participating in maintaining the national security state.
Something weird has happened over the last 48 hours that we need to talk about. The presidential cabinet is starting to say things that are making people really curious, because it's not just the Epstein stuff that is happening. People like Tulsi Gabbard, who is the director of national intelligence, or people like J.D. Vance, who is the vice president of the United States, are coming out with statements that are very, very surprising and for some confusing, because initially from the past administration, nobody from the cabinet wanted to talk about these topics so candidly. And it's not just about UFOs, although it is kind of related to UFOs as well.
By exposing the truth, by exposing the bad actors within the intelligence community and in the political space who are weaponizing intelligence to advance their own political interests is so important. To be able to turn the light on in places that have been dark for far too long, expose the truth, and drive accountability. That's the only way that we can actually shift this and begin the work to try to restore trust in the intelligence community.
What if some of these dark places have the names of people within your cabinet? Are you going to protect those people too? And it goes both ways, though, because I think the entire political system in the US is rotten to the core. I know that there's a lot of idealistic people and even politicians that are just starting that start out thinking they're going to serve the people and they're going to uphold the Constitution. And if they get involved in the intelligence agencies, or even those politicians get involved with intel officers, that changes over time. The priorities change over time, and a lot of them see a level of corruption and bad actors that they eventually, some of them, not all of them, become part of the system. And if they don't become part of the system, they stay quiet. But those attempts at subverting reality and subverting the truth are also happening in the UFO community and have happened for decades. And this, for example, the latest example is the Wall Street Journal article, which only told one side of the story. It didn't tell both sides. The people who wrote the article went to all sources, but some of those sources were ignored. Their story was not told as they intended it to. That seems like manipulation, and that seems like something that an operation like this would do. Another thing I would do is to get science communicators, people who are like loyal to the established narrative, to use their influence to peddle this information through their influence and through their platforms. And this could also be happening if this Operation Mockingbird is still running, as Benny suggested, and as Tulsi Gabbard did not deny, because she didn't. She kind of confirmed it, but not directly. And I just don't know how high it goes, because, and I'm just going to show you this right now, because another person from the cabinet also made a really wild statement today. And that person is Vice President J.D. Vance, who was just on a podcast called Ruthless Podcast.
There are stories that I am particularly focused on, in part just because you talk with your buddies about it. Like, I'm obsessed with the whole UFO thing. What's actually going on? What were those videos all about? What's actually happening? I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet, but we're only 6 months in. We've been very busy. That's actually the August recess is in part me going to try to dive to the bottom of the whole UFO thing.
Before I break down what Vice President J.D. Vance stated, I want to play a clip from the Richard Dolan show. It underscores how big a deal this statement by J.D. Vance truly is.
One thing in that book that we definitely believe, and I can say I definitely believed, was that any kind of major breakthrough, any kind of major admission, like this is real and we can't figure it out, like that type of thing, would very likely cause an avalanche effect. And that avalanche has not happened. And it's many times I've wondered, why hasn't that avalanche effect happened? Like, when the Navy several years ago came out with these really incredible statements that, yes, we have these UAP encounters. No, we do not know what they are. Yes, they appear to be extraordinary. We've got this now from high-level government officials. 10 plus years ago, that would have been absolutely inconceivable. And it would be easy to think, and I'm one of the people who thought this, that an admission like that would cause people around the world to say, wait a minute. You're telling us this is real. All these years you've been telling us it's not real, and now you're telling us it's real, and that would force a kind of avalanche effect, which is what has not happened.
So what I believe Richard Dolan is referencing is that in September of 2019, the Navy confirmed the videos that were released, the Go Fast, the gimbal, and the FLIR 1 videos, all showed unidentified aerial phenomena. The takeaway was these are authentic videos and they remain unexplained. And then in April of 2020, the Pentagon authorized official public release, even though they were already released, but this was like the Pentagon doing it officially through their own official channel. And the takeaway from that event was there were no new explanations or origin provided. So according to the Navy and the Pentagon, those 3 videos have never been debunked. Where I would push back a little bit against what Richard Dolan stated is that while that is highly significant, and while he is absolutely right that before December 16th, 2017, if something like that happened, we would all be we would be completely overwhelmed by it. I would argue that still the admissions have been falling short of the true nature of UAP. I know John Koslowski, head of Aero, recently said, like, I've come across UAP that I do not understand, and I don't know anyone else who does. So the U.S. government has indeed changed its tune in being forthright about the mystery, but they have not gone so far to give us exact measurements of the capabilities of UAP. So they've been more open about the mystery, that it exists, but they leave the door so wide open to it being foreign adversaries, drones, and they're not really adequately leaving the door open for it being the origin of non-human intelligence. Now, if they were to make a statement going beyond any statements they've previously done, said something like, we don't know what these are, they far exceed human capabilities, and they could be of non-human origin, then maybe what Richard Dolan was speaking of would have occurred. Maybe it really would have been like an avalanche, but I don't think we're there yet. I just wanted to quickly add that John Ratcliffe is the sitting director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And so hopefully he will start broaching the issue. We should pressure him to broach the issue. He did it when he was outside of government, and he did it further than almost anybody. And he went right up to the line to saying, these are not from here. He got pretty close to saying that. He said we couldn't replicate that technology. He said that these technologies would exceed the sound barrier and not without a boom. He said that there were satellite imagery of these technologies. So he's gone so far, but now he's the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. I hope he speaks up about the issue once again. And I certainly see it as a positive development that J.D. Vance, the vice president, has said that one of his focuses is to get to the bottom of the UFO issue. If there's a cover-up, then the United States should just come clean about it. Stop telling me you're interested in getting to the bottom of it. Stop telling me it's an important issue. What I want to know is, are we alone? And what do you actually know about UFOs? And we are in a new place when it comes to the UFO issue. There are some people who want to say it's just a recycling. I don't buy it. It's not just a recycling. We're well beyond any so-called recycling of the past, the future just repeating the past. No, we're beyond that. I mean, I think the clip I just showed you with the sitting vice president stating that he's focused on getting to the bottom of the UFO mystery. Has anything like that ever happened before, where a sitting vice president has stated that? I don't think so. Have UFO videos ever been released and verified by the U.S. government of UAP in the history of this issue? I don't think so. So we're clearly in new territory.
Dr. Robert Malone says RFK Jr. has been briefed on UFOs, goes into time travel and other dimensions. And we also have to talk about J.D. Vance and his comments, because that's where the conversation goes.
And as they were going out the door, we had the woman, Justine, that is our special person within Malone.news that focuses on UAPs. So she was there, and she just couldn't help herself. She asked, do you know anything about the UAPs? And one of them piped up and said, in the investigation, she said, well, I can't talk about it because I'm actively involved in supporting those investigations, but I can tell you that a lot more activity is happening now.
Oh, God.
That's data point number one, and that they're real. Okay. Data point number two, I'm talking to my friend and mentioned this while we were on the boat, and he says, Bobby had a briefing, and all of this stuff is true. Roswell, all those things, the reverse engineering, the origin of the night vision, a whole bunch of this tech comes out of reverse engineering recovered material. And so stay tuned on that. It sounds like there is absolutely there. And we can look forward to, as you're talking about the future, we can look forward to learning a lot more about what the heck is going on with these, whether they're time travelers and they're humans coming back, or they're from another dimension, or they're whatever, fill in the blank. But apparently it's real.
Okay, he doesn't explicitly say they are time travelers or from another dimension, but at least he does raise the question, which is very interesting. Now to all of this, Jared Moskowitz, Congressman Jared Moskowitz, who is very much invested in the UFO topic, says, why did RFK Jr. get the briefing and not J.D. Vance, who is working on this issue? And we're going to get to that in just a moment, but I wanted to show you this intriguing photo talking about RFK Jr. in UFOs. This was posted some time ago in 2024, in November 2024, by RFK Jr., who says, "Happy Thanksgiving, everybody." And he shows a picture of his friends and family. And among those family members, or friends rather, is Danny Sheehan. Now, Danny's done a lot of stuff over the years that wasn't involving UFOs. I mean, he was one of the attorneys in Iran-Contra, for goodness sakes. But it's very interesting that RFK Jr. is now apparently briefed on UFOs. And he's also hanging out with Danny Sheehan. It's got to mean something, right? There's got to be a connection there.
The other thing is there are stories that I am particularly focused on, in part just because you talk with your buddies about it. Like, I'm obsessed with the whole UFO thing. What's actually going on? What were those videos all about? What's actually happening? I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet, but we're only 6 months in. We've been very busy. That's actually the August recess is in part me going to try to dive to the bottom of the whole UFO thing from last year. So
I mean, you got to have us back.
Okay, I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
Okay, so J.D. Vance says he's interested in UFOs. He says he's going to use August to dive into the topic. Well, apparently he's not just talking, because Jared Moskowitz, who is on the other side of the aisle from him, says that indeed J.D. is looking to this issue. So he's interested in it, and he's actively investigating it. Well, if the Project Preserve Destiny information is legit, then he just needs to ask his boss. Because according to the Italian journalist at L'Espresso that broke the Project Preserve Destiny information that I've talked about several times now, according to them, President Trump has wrested control away from the Pentagon in regards to the UFO control group. He has wrested the UFO control group away from the Pentagon. It is now under the purview of the executive branch of Trump. So that is amazing if true. That is big if true. That's huge if true. If there has been a change in the power structure of the UFO control group, that is monumental, and it was done for a reason. We don't know what that reason was. I would love to imagine it was something to do with the disclosure, but I guess we'll find out in the days ahead. But either way, that is monumental. Now, I imagine that is only the government aspects of the UFO control group, which is a massive part of the UFO control group, or maybe just some slice of that government aspect of the UFO control group. Probably not talking about the private contractors and what they're doing. And they do seem to be at odds, the government aspects and the private contractor aspects. And I think there's probably a whole bunch of different factions and fiefdoms involved in all of that. But either way, Trump apparently, according to that information, has wrested control of some of that and put it under the purview of the White House. And he knows all about it. I don't know if he knows the full extent of it, but the Italian researchers or Italian journalists are saying that, he now has control of some part of the UFO control group. And so J.D. Vance just has to ask his boss about all of that, if he's interested in this and if he follows this to the point where he gets to that information and, Trump doesn't tell him outright. Yeah, just go knock on his door. So do you think that will happen? Do you think that he will in turn be briefed on UFOs just like RFK Jr.? Will they whistle up Danny Sheehan to give them a briefing? Is that who you think briefed RFK Jr., or do you think he was briefed by somebody else?